Hi. Before I begin, because I don't know how many of you know about my work in my native Lakota tradition and Christian thought, I thought the best that I can do is start much like a teacher so that I can help you hear the gospel in some ways from a native perspective. A lot like what we read in the Bible, as native people, our connection to our ancestors, the history, and our present are deeply connected in all we do. I, for myself, became a spiritual person in terms of my vocation when I was very young. I'd say about 4 or 5 years old. When I was that age, I lived in a rural area on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation where I am an enrolled member of the Oglala Lakota Tribe. Enrolled means that I can trace my family back to long before colonists came to this land. I know the name of my ancestors who resided in the area where I live, as well as North and South Dakota, Minnesota, and beyond. So I had this very deep and intense experiences with my native traditions when I grew up as a child. I grew up in a family that spoke the Sioux language, that understood the culture, that talked about it at home, and it was central to our lives. My grandparents and my elders in my family made sure that as a child growing up, I would not forget the stories of my family and my people. I like to talk about my grandmother, Alice. She was a teacher, a retired teacher, by the time that I had the opportunity to live with her for a short time. And we lived in this log house that overlooked a prairie with some mountains just outside the Black Hills. And every morning I would come up the stairs to the main level of the house, and my grandmother would be sitting on this couch that looked outside this huge big picture window. And it was always early enough that the sun was just starting to kind of come over the land. And I remember this because I would stop for a moment almost always to just smile and watch her, because she would have her Bible in her hand and she would sit there and she would be staring at this window, and her beautiful white silver hair was kind of shining through with the sunlight, and she would just look so peaceful. But through her, I learned so much. We would sit at that window and we would look out and we would watch, and sometimes there were horses that would run around the house, or you would see the birds, or the wind would be flowing, and then you would see the sun just slowly blanket the area. And then she would begin to talk and tell me stories. And those were some of the most precious moments in my life, because those were the stories that have stuck with me even when I thought I forgot them. That what she was doing was teaching me about the connection that we have with the world around us. Each one of those stories, even if it was about our family in the flesh, a lot of the times they were stories about walking and seeing the world. And it was through my grandparents and my elders in my community that I was able to learn and understand the connection that we have with the world around us. Not so much about this hierarchical kind of understanding, but more of a familial understanding that we really are all connected. And when you look at the world in that way, when you realize that you're not in charge of something, it is part of who we are to take care of each other, and that includes animals. That includes the water, the sky, everything around us. That includes our neighbors. So it was my grandparents. Because of them, they made sure that I knew the stories of my ancestors, that so often many people tend to forget or don't know about those moments that are connected to your life. Those formative moments, that some defining characteristic of your community or your culture. In the Gospels, we see this deep and meaningful connection to their ancestors, and it can be seen through the descriptions that we are given. And also, when we read the entirety of the Bible, we can see the connection of the people that they have with their ancestors, just as my Lakota people do. So for me, for the way I celebrate our Creator, my spirituality, how I interpret biblical readings, or brings me this deeper understanding of what a true interreligious dialogue experience means. And I hope to bring that to you today. For me, it is important to create understanding and healing between Native American and non-Native people, particularly those in faith communities. Native people have suffered deep trauma over many, many hundreds of years, losing our land, our languages, our cultures, our people. And all who call these lands home are the lesser for it. Because while many people and institutions that they contributed to that trauma, it happened with the full participation of Christian churches. So we all still need healing, and healing is doable. And churches have a role to play in healing. As a Native person, I believe in the power of healing stories, because people's stories are sacred. Stories heal because they make invisible pain visible. The listener and the storyteller are both healed by their acts. Churches and all faith communities can play a key role in promoting and experiencing healing by opening ourselves to the traumatic stories so that we can create new positive ones. If we look deeper into our creation story, when God created us, our Creator made us a beautiful canvas. Each intricate part of who we are inside and out is made of a beautiful painted stroke that was created with a purpose. Each beautiful stroke tells of life. We are living. We are a living canvas of such beautifully created art. So when we see ourselves as this beautiful work of art that is connected to more art around us, the creation of God, that in such intricate ways we are connected, it can bring us hope. It shows us that our roles as advocates for the inclusivity and equity action becomes clear, because it is that of a natural relationship to everything and everyone around us. So our Creator is calling us back to experience God's love and care in the created world around us. I once read that faith is not a prerequisite for working towards justice, but our faith in action believes that the truest expression of faith is one that acts for the good of the world. So your actions, they can bring hope. So if we were to look at how we are to be, how we are to act in what is happening with the world around us, we can use this insight and the concepts of love, of justice, and our Creator's intention to see ourselves in relation to all createds around us. In the face of news about the pandemic, the many deaths of people of color, fighting against big oil companies, melting glaciers, it's important to look at the big picture, and we can choose to be hopeful. Find hope in the fact that we can see people like us who are rolling up our sleeves, making pledges, and implementing measures to fight for change. Being positive and hopeful is actually in itself an important way to combat injustices we see around us. It's important to look towards a positive shared future. If we let that hope guide us, if we talk about the ability to get to that place, the more likely we are to get there. So let this hope in the kinship of God's beautiful creation guide your passion and turn your hope into action. Because your hope can make a difference in the world, how you move forward is so important. There are so many things that have happened because of the hope and the passion that people showed. And their actions, they change the world. So follow your heart with vision and with actions, and create your own path in activism for real change, and you will find your purpose. Thank you.